Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we have two big storylines coming your way out of Santa Clara. The first one has to do with San Francisco maybe being on Hard Knocks this season. The other one is another free agent may have burned San Francisco and is giving some fans flashbacks to Eric Kendricks and Devondre Campbell. Gonna get into both those storylines today. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Leave us that 5-star audio podcasting review. It's the best, freest, and easiest way to help us reach new ears and eyes. And without further ado, let's dive into today's news out of San Francisco. According to San Francisco Standard reporter Tim Kawakami, the San Francisco 49ers could very well be involved in an NFC West in-season Hard Knocks like the NFL did last year with the AFC Central. Now, it's not a confirmation. This is Tim Kawakami simply saying that it's certainly a possibility that is the way the NFL goes, but not confirmed. Not saying it's going to happen, but it could happen. Now, the real question is, without knowing exactly how these things work and who signs off on things, let's just say that Kyle Shanahan is the one in charge here. It's going to be a hell no. Kyle's not letting this happen. Kyle is not going to let this go through. He does not want to give the media any attention now. He doesn't like the press conferences. He doesn't like being questioned. He doesn't like being involved in, the media scrum, if you will. He doesn't like being talked to, and at times he almost thinks he's talking down to them because I think he just knows so much more than the media does, and I've been in those rooms, and Kyle's pretty good. He'll joke around. A very dry sense of humor from a person like Kyle Shanahan, but if he's the one signing off the check, if you will, and giving the NFL the go-ahead, he will turn them around and run them off of his property like the old man saying, "Get off my lawn!" That's what this will be like. Kyle is the old woman who sits in front of her front window behind the branches and behind the blinds saying, "Who's walking in my street?" That's how protective he is over those meetings, those press conferences, and what really happens behind the scenes in San Francisco. I'm sure in his eyes, it's a way to protect players, but also protects him and protects the organization. But let's say the NFL's like, sorry, Kyle, that's too bad. You guys were 6-11 last year. You're paying a quarterback, or you're going to pay a quarterback big money. You have guys coming off injury that are really good, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Iayuk, and whatnot, and you guys happen to be the team that really we want to know more about. And fans, and whether they're Niner fans or other NFC West fans, you are the most intriguing option for us compared to, let's say, the AFC East or the NFC South. The NFC West is clearly, without knowing who else is involved in the groupings they're discussing as to who they can cover, the NFC West is a pretty good group to cover this year, right? Seahawks, second-year head coach, new quarterback in Sam Darnold, a team that should be better this year. The Cardinals, kind of the same. They're rather boring. They already covered them once recently. But the Rams, Devontae Adams, no Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, and his wife, mind you. She's probably a bigger storyline than Matthew is currently. But the Rams are obviously, Los Angeles, the darling of the media world, if you will. They're in the city of angels. They want to get covered. They're in Hollywood, if you want to get into that conversation. Then there's San Francisco. This is a high-profile division that really, to me, is anyone's game. It's a 3-team race if you want to talk about top dogs for a variety of reasons, but the Cardinals can certainly make some hay and wreak some havoc in the NFC West. But this isn't going to be seemingly a preseason OTAs and training camp and preseason coverage. It'll be, from what Kawakami is saying, likely an in-season version of Hard Knocks. And with that in mind, I think that opens the door for Kyle to actually say yes. Now, maybe San Francisco doesn't really have a choice in the matter, and the NFL's like, sorry, buddy. We're coming in, you can't stop us. But I think being an in-season version does allow Kyle to not feel the pressure, to not have to focus on, where the camera's going and where they're allowed to be. Don't forget, 2 years ago now, Kyle, I'm sure, was involved in the discussions to allow Netflix to cover Deebo Samuel and George Kittle during the year, which inevitably became a Super Bowl appearing year, so a very long season for them. And they were, a group of receivers and pass catchers being covered by Netflix, including Devontae Adams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And, while that isn't a one-for-one comparison, I think it's very close to it, where the NFL is going to have smaller camera crews at each location through certain portions of the year. And for a team like San Francisco, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think those first 5 games of the season against Seattle, the Cardinals, and Rams is probably where you're going to see a big chunk of things covered for them. But you can also get into the weeds and talk about, with less coverage and less camera crews around, and you being one of 4 potential teams being talked about and recorded constantly, there's really a lot less you have to do to kind of save yourself and protect yourself from potential disaster. Or, you don't want to have the New York Giants and a Saquon Barkley situation happening, or, you don't want to see John Lynch crashing out during a free agency or during the season. So, funny enough, I think last year would have been a lot better opportunity for San Francisco to get covered, right? Coming off a loss in the Super Bowl, you have Devondre Campbell situation happening last year and him walking off the field. You have the injuries, you have the contract negotiations. This year, although it hasn't been boring, there really, while yes is a lot of things to talk about and to cover, the drama, right? There's a reason why you watch Hard Knocks. You want the drama. You want the Antonio Brown. You want the John Gruden. You want the, Joe Shane and Saquon Barkley and Brian Daboll, just losing their minds over signing Daniel Jones and not bringing back Saquon Barkley and then going to Philadelphia. You want the craziness, the zaniness, and San Francisco certainly has some characters, but they don't have Antonio Brown. They don't have John Gruden. They don't have a GM that is sitting on thin ice, right? With that said, though, I do think there is 5 storylines that the NFL could really sink their teeth into with an organization like San Francisco. And we're going to get into every single one of those today. I'm going to talk about what makes sense. I think the first one of the grouping is pretty simple, right? It's been 30 years now, right? 30 years? Let's think. Yes, 30 years since San Francisco has won a Super Bowl, right? Maybe 31 now, depending on how you view that year. 94, 95, right? Chargers crushed them, monkey off the back of Steve Young, Jerry Rice's last in San Francisco. It's been 30 years, and the quest for 6 has had 3 opportunities to be quenched, if you will. That thirstiness had an opportunity to be filled, and it hasn't happened in 3 heartbreaking ways. The Ravens and the Chiefs twice. And I think for the NFL, you want to cover the Niners, it is, can they finally get over the hump? And more particularly, Kyle Shanahan. Can Kyle Shanahan get over the hump? Is this the monkey off the back year for him? Can he finally get past it? Because every year he doesn't, fans get angrier, the organization gets a little more impatient, and while I don't think Kyle or John are anywhere near close to getting fired, the longer things go, that pendulum may swing the other way inevitably, right? You have the Andy Reid comparisons already, which took him, almost 4 shots in the Super Bowl in back-to-back-to-back years nearly, and he didn't get it done. Goes to KC. It wasn't an instant win, but they've now are a dynasty out there in Kansas City. And so I think that's one of, if not the biggest storyline to follow from a broader team-wide perspective with the, zoomed in on Kyle Shanahan approach it can take. The second storyline I think that could follow is that of Brock Purdy's contract extension. They aren't going to cover the team during the negotiations and during OTAs and all the offseason stuff, but it's how does Brock Purdy play after the contract extension? How does Brock Purdy change or not change post, what's seemingly going to be a $200 million deal he gets done this offseason? You can talk about the wins, the losses, a down season, a good season, the outside noise. How do you block it out? And I think it's a good opportunity for San Francisco. Who doesn't need to do this? But for a player that has been, Mr. Irrelevant to now one of the best storylines in all of sports, one of the biggest ones in recent seasons for sure. He's probably the biggest underdog storyline since Tom Brady, if you will. I think that's a pretty good comparison. You had your Kurt Warners and you had your Tom Brady's in the early 2000s. Now, obviously, Brady was the GOAT and Purdy is nowhere near that. But, being the last pick of the draft, becoming a $200 million quarterback is seemingly impossible. And so, to me, that is the number 2 storyline to follow. That is the big one that they can follow from a player point of view. You can talk to Purdy, and I think it's a good opportunity for the team and Purdy himself to kind of build their brand, get a bigger fan base. And that's more a Brock Purdy thing, mind you. Get a bigger fan base. You bring in some people that, don't know a lot about Brock Purdy and become big fans of his, with the humbleness and the approach he takes to life. And, maybe you can get into the religious side of things that may rub some people the wrong way, but, Brock's a country boy who goes, to church every single Sunday and prays to the good Lord himself and then goes out there in the fields during his bye week and and plows the fields, right? He is the old town, middle America, Bible Belt church boy you want to have, or that the world seems to love, if you will. And they usually are infatuated by that, right? Humble beginnings. How does money change you? He's in Iowa, now he's in California. How does that change and all that stuff? So there's a really good story to tell there. And I really wouldn't be shocked when Brock is all said and done, and whether it's in 8 years or 10 years or 20 years, however long Brock Purdy plays in the NFL, there's going to be a movie made about him. There really is. And, Tom Brady's had documentaries, but Brock, to me, it'll probably be a Hallmark exclusive or a, one of those Christian, news or Christian television, Daily Wire, who knows, exclusive. But, like, Brock Purdy's going to have a story made about him one day. Whether it is a rinky-dink, podunk, random, small-town movie or this big budget, with Tom Holland playing Brock Purdy or Mark Wahlberg at the age of 60 playing a 24-year-old at Iowa, who knows? But I think that, following Brock Purdy is a big thing for them post-extension too. You can get the highs and the lows of that deal, the highs and the lows of the wins and the losses, and kind of just get a bigger and better storyline and kind of more insight into who Brock Purdy actually is from a national perspective, where most people don't know who Brock Purdy is, or they see him play, they see box scores, but him as a person, he's a newly married person, newly married man to his wife Jenna, like that's a storyline you want to tell. One of the bigger pieces of wide receiver with Deebo Samuel and George Kittle was, George Kittle and Claire. Like that was a big relationship for them, and they were a big highlight of that for me as a fan of the team, obviously. And you could see that kind of bud with a Hard Knocks of the team, mainly about Brock Purdy. The third storyline, I think, is the Robert Salah return, accompanied by the defensive makeover, which includes, big losses like Mooney Ward and Talanoa Hufanga, Leonard Floyd, Malik Collins, and mainly Dre Greenlaw, right? Then you talk about the new draft class and, Michael Williams and Alfred Collins and C.J. West. Can those guys step up in a big way? And then obviously, Robert Salah is back in San Francisco for the first time. They'll show you flashbacks to 2019 and 2020 and what those years were like and what they built before. And you'll get interviews probably from Kyle and John and Robert Salah about Salah's return. And it won't be anything new that fans of San Francisco don't know, but Salah did say that he was indebted to this organization, and it was the only team he was willing to come back and be a DC for. So that's a pretty big deal. And I think for the NFL to cover that, that's also a pretty big deal. And it helps in that first, 5 to 4 games of the season. You have the NFC West, right? You have the Seahawks in the opener, the Cardinals in week 3. You have the Rams in week 5 on primetime Thursday Night Football on Amazon. Week 4 is a game against the team that almost hired Salah as their head coach. He was starting to put together his staff, which may have included Brant Boyer. Well, now Salah's back in San Francisco playing Jacksonville in week 4 at home. So that's also a pretty nice, chunk of games to cover, including Salah's return and what that can mean for this team. They gave him the keys to the draft. They let him pick 8 guys this year. That's a pretty big chunk of the 11 players they took, or 7 guys this year, excuse me. That's a big change for a team that was offense. They went defense, then offense, defense. They said, Salah, save us. And I think that's a pretty big storyline to cover for the NFL if they can get Hard Knocks out there in San Francisco. The penultimate storyline to me is one that may be better suited for an off-season Hard Knocks or, the preseason OTAs coverage, but that is the return and recovery of Brandon Iayuk. May not be the biggest storyline. That would have been last year's contract negotiations. Shortgate would have been a big deal out there during Hard Knocks. But watching Iayuk in the recovery, when you have your big storylines happening throughout the year, you'll have kind of those smaller kind of pieces where it's like, hey, we have to keep San Francisco kind of in the rotation here. You get BA in his recovery during his rehab, doing drills. You talk to him. He's already vlogging every single day on YouTube. Why not get him involved in Hard Knocks in some way or some form? I think that Week 10 date against the Rams, just after they're in MetLife Stadium, get Iayuk back on grass, give him 7 games to play the rest of the season. Hopefully he can be a playoff contributor for you if you make it this year. But also it gives you a 7-game, almost 2-month stretch of hey, if you're healthy, we can kind of revitalize your trade stock and move you on next year. And so you can get into all that juiciness stuff on Hard Knocks, but primarily we're kind of diving into his recovery, what it was like to get paid last year and all that stuff, and the struggles last season he had early before the injury and all that stuff. So I think it's a good opportunity to kind of get more BA, where fans may not like that because they got too much last offseason, but it really sucks for Brandon Iayuk to not be able to play to begin the year and have to kind of reconstruct his knee via surgery. So I think getting Iayuk on the recovery, in the mend, during rehab, it's a pretty good thing for NFL. You have the insight there that you wouldn't get from other teams. You're not getting Houston and Tank Dell. You're getting Brandon Iayuk, who is a $30 million a year wide receiver on the mend. It's a pretty big thing. And the last storylines I'd cover if I was the NFL, or 2 they could cover if they get the Niners on Hard Knocks during the year, is the return/recoveries of Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams. Now, both these guys are seemingly healthy. However, Christian McCaffrey, off of the PCL tear he had in his knee and the bilateral Achilles tendonitis, former Offensive Player of the Year, Madden cover superstar, was an MVP finalist 2 years ago. Yeah, you want to get the coverage of that. You want to talk about, what it was like last year to be injured, not play much, go to the Super Bowl and lose, get a brand new deal last offseason, then get hurt again, the recovery he's going through. And of course, you'll probably get more into how he's used and how he looks during camp and how he looks during the season and where's his health at. You're going to get insight that you normally wouldn't get from a Kyle Shanahan or Christian McCaffrey, who are going to give you nothing at the podium talking about health and injured players. And of course, then you have Trent Williams, who this is probably where you get into the veteran swan song. He's 37 years old. Is this the end of Trent? He has the ankle injury. He unfortunately last year lost his stillborn child, which is just terrible news for him, but that was an off-season thing for him. Didn't play post that second Seattle game last year in the middle of the season. Had no reason to, mind you. This team was terrible last year. But you can get into, is this Trent Williams' last dance? This team didn't draft the tackle. They've signed a couple of them and have not signed one they thought they did sign, or we thought they did sign. We'll get into that in a second here. But there is no protection behind Trent. And so, I think covering him in what could be his last year, he said he wants to play until he's 40. I don't see that happening, but fingers crossed I'm wrong. But I think, following McCaffrey and Trent, those are smaller storylines to get into, and it probably wouldn't last you a full season. Maybe, one episode or so, but I think are certainly involved or could be in that grouping of storylines that they have. If they have 5 per team, obviously you have the Rams, you have Stafford, you have Devontae Adams there, you have McVay, you have the young rookies. The Cardinals, you have Kyler Murray, you have Jonathan Gannon, you have Will Johnson's injury, you have Walter Nolan out there now. You have a team that wants to make some noise. Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson. Like you have a chunk of people you can cover in Arizona, of course, and in Seattle, Sam Darnold. They traded away DK Metcalf, lost Tyler Lockett. They brought in some draft picks or so. There's less to cover in Seattle, but still some. Where I think Seattle would probably take a back seat, and so did Arizona. It'd be a Niners and Rams coverage of those, the 4 players. Those 2 would be the top dogs of that grouping for obvious reasons. But I think San Francisco would give the NFL exactly what they're looking for. Again, not Antonio Brown levels of craziness, and you're not going to have Brandon Iayuk in his first game back riding into practice on a hot air balloon like Antonio Brown did, but you're going to have some pretty, I don't want to say juicy, but some pretty intriguing storylines to follow with the potential of the Niners being on Hard Knocks on the in-season version of it, if the reports are true from Tim Kawakami that they are at least in the discussions of potentially being on that and when it comes to the NFL perspective. That said, with the NFL schedule being released yesterday, hopefully all of you out there listen to that podcast, nearly 2 hours of deep dives into each game and giving our pre-OTAs, pre-training camp, or season predictions, and even got into who may represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. But if you want to go watch your San Francisco 49ers play this season, you know the best place to go. It's a longtime sponsor. It's SeatGeek.com, and they're going to give you $20 off your first purchase by utilizing promo code 49ers Access. 49 ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com. And again, save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Parking, expensive. Beer, expensive. Food, expensive. Gas, expensive. Life, expensive. Any way you can find a way to get a cheaper deal or a discount, you jump at the opportunity, and I'm giving you one right now. $20 off your first purchase utilizing SeatGeek.com, whether it's on the website or the mobile app. Green is a good seat, red is a bad seat. Find yourself a green good seat and get a discount on top of that utilizing promo code 49ers Access. Okay. The next big news coming out of Santa Clara is that of D.J. Humphries. Because last week, we were scratching our heads saying, why didn't San Francisco draft the tackle? Why didn't San Francisco get this guy and that guy and this guy and that guy? And all those things I think are valid. All those things are true. However, a lot of those arguments or a lot of the complaints were kind of, calmed down when San Francisco signed D.J. Humphries. And it went so far that Humphries' agency and himself posted he had signed with San Francisco on social media. Now, fast forward a couple of weeks or, a week or so, a few days, and it looks like that's not happening. It looks like the Niners, or maybe even D.J. Humphries, have pulled out of that deal. And this is where speculation begins, because my mind starts to swirl to 2 directions. One, San Francisco and D.J. Humphries' agency thought there was a deal done. They got into his medicals, a lot of injuries the last couple years, realized, oh crap, he ain't healthy, that quad ain't right, that knee ain't right, we're not going to sign you. And they immediately signed Andre Dillard and Nicholas Petit-Frere from the Titans, right? 2 guys who simply suck, but are bodies, right? Are some guys that have starting histories, and that was like, whoa, San Francisco signing 2 tackles on the same day, a few days after signing D.J. Humphries. Okay, you don't think much of it when it happens. You go, great, insulation, camp bodies, awesome. But now you fast forward and it's like, oh crap, maybe that was a sign something was amiss because Humphries said he was signed. His agency said he was signed. San Francisco never announced the deal, which I guess is a lesson to learn, that wait till deals are finalized. But he's no longer going to be a San Francisco 49er, according to Matt Maiocco of NBC Sports. It looks as if whether he isn't healthy or he simply just burned them. Again, the healthy, failed physical is part of this, if that is the case. Not saying it happened, but health is wealth, and if you ain't healthy, you ain't playing, right? So maybe they're going to wait and hold things off and see if he can pass a physical and see if that's the way things work. The other avenue, the other angle of this is, is this Eric Kendricks? Is this I'm going to go to San Francisco, then get burned and sign elsewhere? Now, you would assume that if that was the case, Humphries would have already signed somewhere else. It's been a week or so. But it's hard for fans, including myself, to not say, this happened last year. And now, to a lesser extent, you're not replacing Dre Greenlaw, right? But D.J. Humphries, when he was signed, the idea was, okay, you have a backup left tackle now. Burford can play left guard or right tackle. Like, you start to put the piece of the puzzle together, and it starts to make sense. And now it's like, well, wait a minute. There's a big drop-off from D.J. Humphries and Trent Williams. There's another big drop-off from D.J. Humphries to Andre Dillard. And there's an even bigger drop-off from D.J. Humphries to Dillard to Nicholas Petit-Frere. Those last two guys suck. And what was once thought to be, this is the backup left tackle, maybe can go back to right tackle who, maybe 32 years old, but he's a starter for a long time. He was a relatively good pass blocker, had a couple big years of no sacks allowed, to now, oh crap, we don't got that guy. And you're reliant on people that you don't really trust, you don't love. I was talking to some Titans guys over the weekend, and they were like, yeah, good luck with Dillard and Ferre. They're bad. They're really bad players. And so, knowing that San Francisco, although they could come to a new agreement with Humphries, as of now, on May 15th, D.J. Humphries is not going to be a San Francisco 49er. It stinks. It sucks. And the backup, tackle position, which is a big need, San Francisco lost Jalen Moore. They have Cole McKivitz, who is usually healthy, but you just never know. And you have Trent Williams, who misses about 4 games a year. When he plays, he's great. But when he doesn't play, you're like, okay, this is not good. Now it's another question as to, okay, does Burford become your backup left tackle again? Which I don't hate that, but you want more bodies in the building. Last year, you thought, great, we have Burford, we have Feliciano, we have Pooney. And then bang, 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 2 of those guys go down. Feliciano misses the entire season. He's now retired. He may come back, later in the year for kind of a stretch run for some team. Then Burford broke his hand, was like, I'm going to lose right guard to Pooney. Pooney steps up, takes over, and looks like a freaking all-pro in year 1. They move Burford to left guard and left tackle. He has to play because Banks gets hurt late in the year. Then Ben Barch gets hurt. Then Burford gets out there. Then Jalen Moore plays, and Jalen Moore gets hurt, right? So this is a big need for San Francisco, and to lose bodies like that, it's not good. It's not good at all, but I'm not sure exactly why it happened. But there is not a big question, I guess. It's D.J. Humphries, not they're losing a starter. But it's an important position for a team like this that does have some questions, on their depth of their roster, mainly at tackle. Do you want Austin Pleasants backing up Trent Williams? No. You would love to have more bodies involved in there. And if anything, you have 4 quarterbacks. Someone's got to play during the preseason, and you don't want to play Trent. You don't want to play Colt McKivitz. You want to play Dillard and Humphries and Burford and Pleasants, those guys. And the less guys they have, the less guys that can sit out. So we will see what happens with D.J. Humphries. I hope they can get a deal worked out. That'd be great, but it's not good. It's not good when you think you have one of the better backup tackles still in the open market signed, and you go, okay, this is making up for not drafting a tackle. Yeah, he's older, whatnot, but who cares? It's a 1-year deal, prove it deal, be a backup tackle. There's no strings attached to money small. And now it's like, we don't have that guy either. And it's like, wow, you could walk into this year with Burford, Dillard, Nicholas Petit-Frere. You don't want to do that. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully they can get a deal done soon, but not a great look for San Francisco. And it looks worse simply because of how last year went, 6-11, and mainly Eric Kendricks, and then turns into Devondre Campbell, and it's like, holy hell, this is a nightmare. But we'll see. That's all I have for you today, though. Only 2 small things. Put down below in the comments, would you want to see San Francisco on Hard Knocks? Which storylines would you want them to follow? And what do you think is going on with D.J Humphries? And does it worry you that this team doesn't really have a bona fide swing tackle yet, with Humphries looking like he's not going to be playing in the red and gold this season? Maybe things change. Maybe they don't, but tell me down below in the comments what you guys think. You can also ping me on social media at 49ers.access is the Instagram. 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. You can use that promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. And you can like, share, subscribe on the YouTube and audio podcasting channels. And if you would kindly leave us that 5-star audio podcasting review. Tell your friends about the show. Word of mouth and reviews are the best, easiest, and freest ways to help the show reach new listeners and reach more of the faithful out there that are decked out in the red and gold, rooting for the San Francisco 49ers. That said, my name is Sterling Bennett. And until next time, as always, stay faithful.